All right, and welcome back to Photo Tips. And today we're going to talk about a burning subject, which is burning your photos. Now, we're not talking about setting them on fire because they're terrible. The term burning actually means to darken the image in certain areas and emphasize other areas over other areas. So what we're going to do first, this first step of burning, is to move your cat away from the computer because she always loves the computer, and she's going to sit nicely right there. Ooh, sorry about that. Okay. So let me go ahead and show you an image on the screen. You'll be able to see what I'm talking about. So we're in Adobe Camera Raw here, and this interface you see here, at least on the right here, is going to be the same in Adobe Lightroom. So if you use that editing interface, the edits in here are going to be virtually identical. So here we go. An image. Here's some roots there. In fact, I did a video with this image in it a little bit earlier. I'll link that up in the top. But you know, it's a nice image. I love the texture here. When I saw it, the nice the roots there wrapping around, but it's just too flat. It's a very flat image. It's in the forest, so you're not seeing a whole lot of super high contrast necessarily. I think it was kind of an overcast day as well. So what can we do to help it? The image was fairly well exposed. You do notice here that I did decrease the exposure ever so slightly, but that's, you know, just a matter of preference probably at this point. So a couple things I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead here and grab an adjustment brush. We're going to start right off doing that exact same thing, and then we'll go into some further edits. So this adjustment brush, I'm going to configure it as a dodging brush, kind of like I would in a chemical darkroom, which is a whole different process actually. You can look that up, but it actually is a little circle. You have a little hole there or what have you, and you do things there with it. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. So I'm going to keep a fairly big brush. You can see I have the full effect is within that solid line. We have the dotted line there representing the feather where it will taper off. So what I'm seeing here, I'm actually seeing a line kind of going like this. So I want to emphasize that. So I'll go in here and do that, and I'll say, I'll go ahead and start brushing. And I've got, if you look at my exposure here, it's just a little over a stop, which is a good starting point, I think, for this. And I'll come over here and kind of do the same thing. In fact, I think it's a little bit too big. We'll go in there. There we go. And I might kind of do a little bit of a twist right here. Okay, so you can see, we're starting to see that little curve I mentioned starting to appear. So we're going to stop with that for now. And then I'm going to go back to the main image here because I kind of want to make it a little bit softer, and that will actually emphasize more of that curve, I think, as we do that, and you'll see that. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is reduce my clarity, which decreases those contrasts and the edges and stuff like that. But I don't want to lose too much of the texture there of the actual tree. So luckily now, of course, there's a texture slider, and we've had videos on that. So I'll go ahead and bring that up just a tad there. Okay, so you can see it's really starting to work. But, you know, one little thing here, this was taken in winter. There's not a whole lot of color here in the image. So I think I'm probably going to go black and white. So we're going to go ahead and select that like so. And you can see when we did that, it does simplify things a little bit, but we're probably going to have to do some more edits. That normally happens when you go into black and white or change to color. Some of the edits you initially made, you're going to have to make some adjustments, okay? So, because typically black and white images need to be more contrasted than color. That's just the way it turns out, okay? So let's go in here. I'm going to go ahead and go into my black and white mix to start, though. And what we can do here, you see red, orange, yellow, green, aqua, blues, and so forth there. These are actually representing the colors in the actual image, and we can make those colors lighter or darker even though we're in black and white, even though we're in a grayscale mode. So for example, you may recall there's some green in here from some moss and things like that. So I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is I will go ahead and make that darker. And you see as we do that, it kind of creates more of an interest there because these aren't sticking out as much, and we still have here in the in the oranges and things like that, we've got some stuff there. So, in fact, I may play around with that at least to show you. You can see the orange. I may not fool around with that. Probably the yellow is going to have the greatest effect. Yeah. I'm going to leave that as is for now. And then I'm going to go back to my adjustment brush. So I'll click adjustment brush, and then we can select the one we were doing. You saw the outline there of it. I want to do even something a little bit more drastic here. Okay. I think I'm going to stick with that. And then also what I'm going to do, because remember, we started with color and went to black and white. I think I'm going to go ahead and decrease that clarity ever so slightly and maybe bring out the highlights. So when I do this, you'll see the effect. I may not go down this low, but I'll just, for demonstration purposes, I'll show you here. It kind of creates this nice glow, which I really like. So, but I'm not going to do it quite that much. Let's see here. And we have the cutest picture right now. If you see Nala's good right there between. She must want to be rubbed or something like that. So she's been a little sick recently, but I think she's doing okay today. There we go. All right. Okay, so I think I'm going to stick with that. I might do a couple more adjustments here. We don't want to do too much here, folks. Just what we need to do. Okay, I think I'm going to stick with what you see right there because I really think that's a really nice look and really emphasizes that. However, one more thing I want to do. You know, it's nice and black and white. We start to see that curve, but gosh, I almost want to throw a little bit more color back in here to make this feel a little more woodsy or something like that, if you know what I mean. But I don't want to make it a full color image. So if you've seen my videos before, I love to do color filters and black and white images to add a little something there. So if you haven't seen that, watch those videos, but I'll show it to you again. Unfortunately, we can't do it in Adobe Camera Raw. We have to go into Photoshop. Unless I'm wrong there, please correct me in the comments section. But we'll pop that open. And if it cooperates, there we go. It's going to open it up in Adobe Photoshop. So there we are. Okay. So what it did, when I converted it to grayscale in Adobe Camera Raw, it removed all the color, it set it as a grayscale image, and Photoshop is not going to let me add color to a grayscale image. Therefore, I need to change it back to color. So some of this is cut off on your screen, but at the very top, you go to Image, you go to Mode. We'll select RGB color for our purposes here. And let's see here. And then what you'll notice here is I have my Photoshop set up in the photographer mode, and that puts these photo filters and all the adjustments right here, and it's an adjustment layer, so I can save it later. And I'll click on that, and immediately you can see it selects a warming filter, which is what I was thinking of doing. I could also do a cooling filter, or I could, you know, do some weird color if I wanted to. Violet, I don't want to do that. But I probably think I'm going to do 85. That's what it's defaulted to. That's a bit strong for me and a little too orange. I think I'm going to select an 81. That's a little bit of a weaker one. You know, please play around with these. They're a lot of fun. These you actually used to stick back on your film camera back in the day, and they're not used that often now because you can edit it now, and it's just easier that way. But they were used a lot in the past. That's where those numbers come from. So it's at 25% density. I can actually go, you know, super high up and, you know, make it crazy like that. I don't want to do that. I'm going to go ahead and bring it down. And you know what? Gosh, now that I saw it go up, I want to just keep it at 25%, which is the default. My initial thought was that was too much. You know what? Let's go ahead and do with that because, you know, sometimes your ideas change. Okay, so I think that works really, really well. Let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to go ahead and do a quick border around because, you know, I love to do that because it's almost like you're framing it on your wall. Let's go ahead and take a look at it here. In fact, I'm going to reduce this ever so slightly for your screen because I do know it is cropped on your end. Okay, so here we go. And this is something that is just, it was so simple. This took us just a few minutes to do. So we burned in here, we made it darker around here and a little bit this way. And that really, really emphasized this beautiful curve that's in the roots here. And we made it a little less clarity, a little more glow there with blowing out some highlights, but we didn't get rid of the texture too much because we used that texture slider. And of course, we added our photo filter to warm things up. And I think this is really, really, really nice. I'm very pleased with it. Please let me know in the comments. Let's go ahead and before we exit though, let's go ahead and save this out as a JPEG image. But before I do that, you know what? Come on, computer, let's get rid of that border because I don't want to have that in there for our purposes now. Save that as a JPEG after, and of course I have already saved the before we started the video. And let's see here. All right, let's start with our before. And you saw the potential here, but it is just too washed out completely. It doesn't work in color. It's too flat. Everything is so even. We don't see that wonderful, beautiful texture of the root that we initially saw when we took the picture. That happens sometimes. You take a picture, you come back and say, oh, that's not what I remember. It's because our eyes are very selective in what they see. We have to train our eyes when we're doing photography a little bit differently. And also the camera just sees light differently than our eyes. Our eyes can see more depth and dimension. Cameras are much improved, but it's kind of weird sometimes. So we got to deal with it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the after. And this is where we really made the difference. And even though we're in black and white, if you were out there with me, this is kind of how it looked if I looked there across the stream and looked at those roots that were sticking down there. So I'm very, very pleased with this one and how it turned out. Didn't take that much time at all. So as you can see, Nala, he hasn't even gotten upset yet. That's how quickly we got through this. So anyway, I do appreciate you watching Photo Tips, learning how to burn your images. And make sure to like the video. Please subscribe. Please give some comments down below. Whatever platform you're on, Facebook, YouTube, what have you. Please like, follow, do all that. I do appreciate you watching. You have a good one. Bye-bye.